Vijay, dear Pradeep, my dear students. It's really a very, very significant topic for the discussion which has been organized by the Gandhi Study Circle. Because neoliberalism is not an economic project, it's more of an ideological project. I'll try to briefly talk about two important aspects within the given time. One is that how neoliberalism is an ideological project. The second thing is about how neoliberalism is something which is against the concept of social justice. These two are very, very significant aspects which we need to know when we want to really engage with the state and the policies is concerned. Why neoliberalism is an ideological project? Whenever we say an ideological projects always work towards a cultural conformism. They want people to accept certain aspects and follow that one. That is what the cultural conformity is a very, very significant aspect as far as any ideological project is concerned. How neoliberalism is different from the previous versions of liberalism is concerned. I'll just talk about the three important versions of liberalism. The first one is the classical liberalism, which we saw during the Enlightenment period. The classical liberalism insists more on the aspects of rationalism. The whole idea of a Renaissance ideology, you might have studied about the Renaissance ideology of humanism, which insists on rationalism, which is against the feudal ideology of fatalism, where rationalism is about the questioning certain things and trying to understand the world in a dialectical manner. That is a major aspect as far as the rationalism is concerned. But the classical liberalism insisted on non-interference of the state. There is a particular context for that one. Because as you all would have studied about the Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, all of them, they were representing a particular class, the emerging bourgeois class in the European society at that particular point of time. They were representing the revolutionary class, no doubt about that one. Compared to feudalism, the emerging bourgeois class is a revolutionary class, no doubt about that one. They are representing them and they want a complete freedom because the capitalist political economy needs a complete freedom for making a profit. The previous kind of a political system, whether it's monarchy or any other political system, is something which is against this particular freedom is concerned. That is why they said that the state should not interfere at all. They believed in individual freedom. What is the reason for believing in individual freedom? Because only in a free environment, human beings will be able to realize their potentialities. Whether it's an intellectual potentiality or emotional potentiality or spiritual potential, whatever potentiality, you can realize that only in a free environment. So they insisted on a human freedom also. They also believe that the markets are infallible. The markets are not going to fail at all. When they say that the state should not interfere, it means that the markets are inherently good. They're not going to fail. That is a kind of a belief they had, but the frequent failure of the market has slowly weakened that belief. For example, in 1870s, there was a big economic crisis. Between 1870 and 1900, the whole Africa was colonized, except Liberia and Ethiopia. The whole Africa was colonized because the colonialism was something which was through the state political power, which is going to help the capitalism to revive itself. So at every point of time, even till recently, 2008 economic crisis, whatever economic crisis you're going to look at, everywhere the state is going to be playing an intervening role. So during the time also, in the classical liberal period also, the state played an interventionist role. As a consequence of that, the capitalism was able to survive to a larger extent. But after the World War II, you know about the kind of the new political economic order that emerged based on the Keynesian compromise. That is where they insisted that no, the state should also intervene. The Keynesian compromise is not something which emerged in 20th century. Even in the 19th century, philosophers also, you can look at that one, wherever they said that the industrial revolution and the consequent development of the capitalism has created a huge inequality among the people. The social evils have increased a lot. When the social evils have increased a lot, various philosophers said that no, the state should play an intervention role, where they should also try to bring about certain law and order. They should also try to play certain affirmative role if you're not going to do that one, it is going to lead towards more discontent and revolt against the state itself. That is why they already started discussing about the interventionist role of the state, but that became a reality completely only after the World War II, where you will find the based on the welfare liberalism, the welfare state emerged all over the world. In the Western countries, you know that how the welfare state played a very significant role in trying to address many of the social crises. As far as the Indian context is concerned, the welfare state also emerged in India, but not very similar to what you have in the Western countries, because in India, at the time of independence, we did not have a class of a bourgeois. The capitalist class, we have individual capitalists, we did not have a capitalist class at all. This is similar to what you find in most of the decolonized nation, wherever, because one of the important agenda of colonialism is to not allow the formation of the capitalist class. That is how they try to exploit and extract everything over there. That is the reason the state has to intervene over there, and finally, the state played a important interventionist role in the form of a welfare liberalism. Whatever the kind of a state, the mixed economy, whatever you talk about, it is part of the capitalist political economy. It is not something which is against the capitalist political economy. It is with a clear intention of trying to strengthen the existing capitalist political economy. That is the whole idea of the welfare state itself. But over a period, if you're going to look at by 70s, already the capitalist class has become little stronger as far as the Indian context is concerned, and they don't want anymore the intervention of the state is concerned. That is where the whole idea of opposing, not only in India, I'm talking about all over the world, this particular context they started opposing because they want a complete liberty to carry out everything over there. That is where they started talking about this neoliberalism, which has been already spoken after the World War II itself. The Mont Pelerin Society, the Hayek has founded, Hayek was one of a important person of this particular economic society. They already started talking about, many of you might have read, if you really want to know about neoliberalism, I would advise that you can read the Road to Serfdom by Hayek. That's one of a classical work which is going to give you a foundation regarding understanding the neoliberalism is concerned. So, how this neoliberalism is different from the classical liberalism? Neoliberalism, if you're going to look at the Mont Pelerin Society's discussion itself, they insist that we want to revive the classical liberalism. They don't want the kind of a welfare liberalism at all. They want to revive no welfare idea at all. They were against the Keynesianism, and also they were against the socialism. So they want to revive the classical liberalism, where they insisted that the main difference between the classical liberalism and the neoliberalism is that the classical liberalism talked about non-intervention of the state, but the neoliberalism also talks about the non-intervention of the state, but the classical liberalism insists on the passiveness of the state, where the state is not going to intervene. The state is going to be silent. But in the neoliberalism, the state is going to play an active role in creating market wherever there is no market. So, more than that, as an ideological project, neoliberalism insists that, because neoliberalism believes in the market value, neoliberalism insists that this market values has to be imbibed in our personal life also. It is not just something which is confined to the market. The market principles, whether profit or loss, you have to take a responsibility for that one. You should not depend upon anyone at all. It's all about your self. You have to depend on only yourself. That is a major concept over there. If you're going to look at all the policies after that, many of them insist that one. One of the important thing, Muhammad Yunus, who got a Nobel Peace Prize, for what is the concept? The microcredit. What is the whole idea of a microcredit system? You're poor, you have to come out of the poverty. The state will not do anything. You have to come out of the poverty because you are responsible. Because the inequality and poverty are a political concept. These are not something based on a individual effort. Due to the political system and structure only, you will find such a kind of a inequality in a society. But it insists that no, you have to only do that one. So, another role as far as the state in the neoliberalism, this is very relevant to what I'm going to talk about the next topic about the social justice. The state has to create market wherever there is no market at all. But can a state come and say that no, I want to create a market, there is no market in this particular? Do you think that people are going to accept that one? No. There is going to be resistance among the people. So, the state do that in a different manner. An example I'll give you. From 1950 until 1990, if you're going to look at the amount of GDP we have allocated to education, we started from 0.58% in 1950s. Even though the priority of the government at that time was not education, we had agriculture, industrialization, everything was priority anyway. So we started with 0.5%, but we progressed and we were able to reach around 3% by 1990. From 1990 till 2025, we are still hovering around 3 to 4% in spite of the huge increase in the population who are accessing the education. This is not something, the state is not prioritize certain thing, the state is not interested. No. It is a political act of the state. By trying to reduce the GDP, by trying to reduce the allocation, you are trying to disturb the structure of the government funded education. Recruitment, infrastructure, everything is going to crumble at a particular point of time. At the same time, the state is giving opportunity for private players to start the educational institution, whether it's a school or college or university, whatever it might be. So, indirectly, by trying to stagnating the money which you are trying to allocate for the education, you are encouraging it applies for everything. It is a responsibility of a state to provide pure drinking water. When the state fails, automatically Bisleri and Coke are going to get benefit out of that one. How the market is created, look at that. The state is not trying to create in a direct manner, but the state, through its action, is inducing certain factors which is trying to create the market. For health also, around 1% of GDP we are still allocating. We are calling ourselves as a medical tourism for many of the countries who the private bigger hospitals are doing that one. But still, if you're going to look at the primary level health indicators are concerned, we are poorer than Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is comparatively, the economy is much smaller, but they are much better because they invest more in the primary healthcare, not in the tertiary healthcare. We don't do that one. We don't do that one because the priorities of the state are something to weaken. Because if you insist, if you're going to invest in the primary healthcare, you will not have a major people going towards the tertiary healthcare at all. Because many of the health issues can be solved at the primary level itself. If you're going to ignore the primary, automatically most of the people are going to come towards the tertiary. Then all this bigger hospitals are going to benefit out. This is an indirect way of creating a market wherever there is no market. It applies for all the sectors. From 1990s, if you're going to look at, that is what happening over there. Social justice, another very significant. It also emerged after the Enlightenment period, as I told you before itself. The social justice is the basic belief of social justice, which we had in the Indian context, in the ancient Indian context also. We are going to look at the Buddhism, we are going to look at the Jainism. Everyone believed the moral equality of individuals, which Baba Sahib Ambedkar keep insisting on, the moral equality of individuals. But in the ancient period, we were more focused towards the dignity of the individuals rather than the material equality of the individuals, which started in the 20th century only. So the social justice believes that everyone should get an equal opportunity because all are morally equal. The idea of social justice is that, I'll just switch it off. The idea of social justice is to create an egalitarian society, not an equal society. The equal society is a project of a socialist or a communist when you talk about. But a social justice is a liberal concept only. It wants to create an egalitarian society. How? By providing an equal opportunity to everyone. Why you want to provide an equal opportunity? Because the people are morally equal. Due to historical reasons, certain sections have been benefited, certain sections are not benefited. So you need to have a equal opportunity for everyone. After providing equal opportunity, what is the outcome? You should not be worried about. That's why Ambedkar talks about the concept of initial equality. You first create an initial equality. Everyone should have an equal opportunity to access is concerned. After giving equal opportunity, the outcome is going to be produce an inequality. You should be tolerating that one. That is what J.S. Mill also talks about. You should be tolerating the inequality that is emerging, that one. So the social justice insists that we need to have this one. This is something which is embedded within the Indian constitutional framework. Many of you might have studied the Indian constitution basically has a framework of a positive liberalism. The liberalism talks about the equality freedom for everyone. There is no state intervention. But in an unequal society, if you're going to give a freedom to everyone, automatically what will happen? It is going to benefit only it is going to perpetuate the inequality. So the positive liberalism insists that the state has to play an intervening role to create an equal opportunity. Based on this particular Article 15.4, Article 16.4 is something a classical example to show how this whole idea of affirmative action as far as the Indian context is concerned. And Article 38 in DPSP, that is also very significant, which talks about the egalitarianism. It says that the state should strive to reduce the income but eliminate the social inequality. So income inequality is accepted because that is the liberal framework. Liberal framework doesn't bother about the inequality. They don't want any kind of a social inequality. They were comfortable with the inequality. That is the reason we try to measure only the absolute poverty. We don't measure the relative poverty. Absolute poverty means if you're going to earn more than $2, you're no more a poor. The state is not going to support you. That's it. You can go and take care of yourself. The relative poverty talks about the inequality that exists in a society, which they don't, because inequality is a functional component of a liberal political economy. Without inequality, liberalism cannot survive at all. So, in this way only, the affirmative actions in the Indian Constitution reflects the egalitarian liberalism, which later John Rawls and others speak about the egalitarian liberalism. That is something which you can find easily in the Indian Constitution. Three ways in which the social justice policies, the interventionist policies that are being done by the state. One is the reservation. Second is the financial support that is being extended to the different sections of the population in the form of a scholarship, in the form of any kind of a support over there. The third is a protective mechanism or the protective laws to protect the women, protect the vulnerable section of the society, SC/ST Act. All these are the protective acts. These are the three important forms of affirmative intervention. If you're going to look at the affirmative action in the United States, affirmative action is the enabling force. They don't reserve the seats. They only enable people to participate over there. That is why now recently Trump has even stopped that one affirmative policies. But earlier it was that they will make sure that a fair representation, that is what the objective of their policy is, a fair representation of the people in a particular institution. They don't reserve at all. But in India, along with the affirmative, we also insist on reservation. What is the reason is that because the caste and gender based biasness is something structurally embedded in our society. Even if you are going to give an equal opportunity, it is not going to result in people participating in equal manner. One small example, it was thought about by the Constituent Assembly members long back. Recently, 2007, Professor Thorat conducted a study in Delhi only, where in the private sector, they made an application for 100 private companies. For all the 100 applications, they made around 100 applications. All the applications have a equal qualification, equal skill set. Everything is equal, except the name. The name is going to indicate whether you are a upper caste Hindu, you are a Muslim, or you are a lower caste Hindu over there. The chances of being called for an interview is 30 to 40% more for upper caste Hindu than a Muslim and a Hindu and the lower caste Hindu is concerned. Chance for being called for interview. Forget about how do you perform an interview, whether you succeed or that's a secondary thing. Even to be, that is what we say, structurally embedded. That is why our constitution makers made sure that we need to reserve certain seats in along with the affirmative financial support, whatever you're talking about, we need to reserve the certain amount of a seat also. This whole politics of social justice is something which is contradicting the neoliberal political ideology. Because neoliberalism believes in a complete non-intervention. The state should not intervene at all. Why should state intervene to reserve certain thing? Why should state decide about that one? It's only the market which is going to decide. Based on the competition, everything is going to be decided over there. They are completely against this whole idea of a reservation system itself. But politically, you cannot tell that. No political party, even all the major political parties follow the neoliberal political ideology. Nobody can openly tell that no, we are against the whole idea of this reservation itself. they are trying to do certain aspects. I will not get into that one. Two important aspects which Ajay might disagree with me on one sub-classification. The two important judgments, I also require you to read that one. One is on the EWS and another is on the sub-classification. Both these judgments and both these policies are something which are trying to challenge the whole philosophical ideas for the concept of reservation in India is concerned. See, in reservation in India has been, if you read the Constituent Assembly debate, you will understand, SC reservation, what is the reason we are giving? Discrimination is one of the important aspect. ST reservation, isolation. They are not part of the mainstream society, that is important, that one. OBC reservation and even other communities who are part of the OBC, that is to a larger extent based on along with the social discrimination. That is one component of that one. That was Mandal Commission also did on the whole caste hierarchy and other aspects also play an important role. Another important factor which the courts insisted again and again is the underrepresentation. These are the three ways in which we can, that is why in Mandal Commission itself the sub-classification for OBC have already come. But for the SC, ST it did not come, and finally it has been suggested by the state and implemented also as of now, because the whole idea of the SC reservation is a discrimination. You are trying to make the SCs as a discriminator for another SC. That's not the reality as we saw, because the SCs are not in a dominant position to recruit people or deny the people as far as the employment is concerned. So these two projects of the neoliberalism are something which wants to, and EWS. EWS is something which is a very shocking kind of a reservation, because if you are going to look at all other reservation, whether SC, ST, whether OBC, everything, it is based on certain kind of data which is there with the state to support, and empirical evidences play a very, very significant role over there. And second thing is that economic, you don't have to give a reservation for EWS. Obviously, we are not against the poor. The poor also needs to be included. How you can include? Give them financial support. If they are poor, give them an affirmative action. That is the second affirmative action I talked about. Give them a financial support. Let them also benefit out of that and participate over there. Rather than reserving that one, because the economic status is not a permanent status at all. When you're talking about the caste-based reservation, we are talking about an ascriptive status. We are not talking about any kind of a flexible status at all. That is why the whole idea of reservation, what we had in mind, is completely different what they envisage in the constitutional framework is completely different from what you have in the reality is concerned. So these two are some of the very significant intervention over a period where they don't want to give the reservation, they want to end the whole idea of reservation. The second aspect is that one of the important outcome of the economic liberalization is that, as we all know that, as I told you before also, about the privatization of the public sector is concerned. Still now we don't have the reservation in the private sector is concerned. 90% of the labor force in India works in the informal sector, where there is no social security, there is absolutely no kind of a safety net for the people at all. Out of the remaining 10%, around only 5 to 6% work in the government sector. For that only we have reservation, and that is also slowly getting reduced now. Slowly, when they are privatizing based on the neoliberal concept, everything is slowly getting reduced, and the way in which the private corporate, already we saw the research study of Thoret. There was another study, there is also, I'll quote, there is another study by Surinder Jodhka and Newman, that the particular article where they interviewed around, in the corporates, they interviewed around 26 HR managers. These are big corporates. They employ more than 10 lakh people. That is a kind of a big corporates. Around 26 the HR managers they have interviewed for a particular study to understand that whether the caste-based reservation should be there or not. That is the whole agenda of doing that one. Almost all the 26 HR people have rejected the idea of a caste-based reservation. They said, no, caste-based reservation should not be there at all. We don't see the caste of a person to recruit at all. Then they started probing about what kind of a questions you're going to ask in the interviews over there. One of the important questions, when you also go for an interview, you will also understand that one. One of the important questions they insist on is the family background. Where you're coming from, what your siblings are doing, what your parents are doing. This is enough for us to, because the kind of inequality we have, this is, many of them try to identify your caste based on which village you're coming from. You all know that one. That is how the Indian caste structure is so strong over there. So the private sector, what we are talking about is completely against this whole idea of a social justice. When the neoliberal framework is trying to privatize everything, at the same time, even though the Article 16 for the amendment, through that amendment, it also gives a scope for reservation in the private educational institution. No state has tried to come out and implement that at all. Whether it will come or not, that's a different question over there. The reservation in private sector is not something which is going to happen very easily at all, because the kind of resistance in a neoliberal political economy and the Hindutva politics also quite comfortably support this one, because the reservation is something which is challenging the traditional caste-based hierarchy. That is something which is problematic for the Hindutva forces also. So they don't want to really continue with the reservation. That's why if you look at all the whole record of the Hindutva, after the first amendment in 1952, when the election happened, they insisted that when we win the election, we are going to do away with this 15/4 amendment, which has came in this one. So in this way, the neoliberal culture as a competition, as a individually we have to, that's what we talk about. Nowadays UGC also talks about skill-based education, not a critical thinking at all. You have to equip yourself for the neoliberal market that has been the focus over there. In this neoliberal market, there is another phenomenon that is happening similar to what we have a Varnashrama kind of a hierarchy. The same kind of a hierarchy is getting created in the neoliberal also. Who is accessing what kind of a school? Who is getting what kind of a skill? This is not something which is equal for everyone. There is a hierarchy which is getting restructured, and it is coming in a new form, in the form of a neoliberalism. Probably due to the time shortage, I will not try to expand this one. In the question and answer, if there is any question, I'll try to expand on this one. And this is how the neoliberalism is something which is against the whole idea of social justice. I'll just stop here, and then if there are any questions later, I'll take it up. Thank you.